I just want to put this video out here just because people don't realize that the narrative of Martin Luther King is not the actual Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was used to control uh, a large population of our people in order to get them subservient into wanting to be part of American society. And like I said before, they want us to be a part of American society so they can mingle society so that we can all collectively be a part of the debt slave mentality in regards to us. If you blend in everyone, it's going to cause confusion. If you blend all groups of people together, it's going to cause a sense of, I don't really know what's going on around me, so I can be easily manipulated. And that's what Martin Luther King was used. He was used to implement a lot of things. He was involved. He was used by the communists to bring in a lot of Marxist reforms to American government. The Civil Rights Act in 1964 or 1965, and with that, that allowed American people, or the so-called Black people, um, to be used as part of American society, so that they can, just be a part of the fold. And then on top of that, that allowed women, immigrants, LGBT to also backdoor their way into getting higher up into American society. So they used the so-called Black man's plight to upgrade other demographics. And the so-called Black man doesn't even benefit from the own plight that he started, like the civil rights movement. And like they do with everything. That's just the same thing with the Black Lives Matter movement. They used the so-called Black man's death, like George Floyd and these other brothers who got killed, so that they can implement their own Marxist reforms. So they just use you as the quote unquote Trojan horse so they can implement the things that they really want to do, like today with LGBT and transgender rights and all these other rights and stuff like that. So let's get into some stuff about Martin Luther King. We're going to read about some of the articles or some of the things that's some of the documents that actually did come out recently um, about Martin Luther King. It's actually a 20-page document, but yeah, we're going to get into that. So this is Martin Luther King. The first thing I just want to say that his name really isn't Martin Luther King. So King, where is it? King was born Michael King Jr. January 15, 1929. So he was Michael King Jr. His father's Michael King Sr. from Ebenezer Baptist Church. Oh, Ebenezer Baptist Church. And eventually they went to Germany and they learned about the or they, I guess they knew about, but they just looked at some sites of the Reformation. Reformationist Martin Luther, who started the Reformation movement in the 1500s in Europe. And that was if y'all don't know, he had the document where he posted his thesis about the issues that he had with the Catholic Church, and was able to start his own movement called the Reformation, where they wanted basically the Bible to be translated in their own languages like German and English and Italian, all that stuff. So Martin Luther had an issue with the Catholic Church, who were so-called Black people at the time, and that was actually one of the big reasons why uh, the the um, the nobility, the Black nobility of Europe started to fall. It was after the Reformation, and really after the Black Plague, the Black Death, the bubonic plague, the Serf rebellions, and the Reformation. Those things happened very quickly, and it started to basically destroy the so-called blacks of nobility in Europe, until it ultimately culminated in the late 1700s, mid 1800s. But yeah, keep going. But then after that, they left Germany. His father decided to name him Martin Luther King, and that's how we got Martin Luther King. But I don't want to get too much on this. I actually got an article where it talks about to make sense of the shocking new MLK documents. This came out in 2019. All right. So, what do you do when a great hero is alleged to have done something awful? And the people who are alleging this is the FBI. It's not just some random people. This is the FBI. They create a whole documentation of Martin Luther King. They had him on surveillance all the time. So it's not like they're just alleging this out speculation. No, they actually have wiretaps, they have recordings, they have video. They got a lot of stuff on Martin Luther King. It's a lot of dirt on King. Um, but yeah, man. But yeah, he went through a lot. We're gonna get to some things. Uh, so they said the most shocking claim Garrow relates to that King was present in a hotel room when a friend of his, Baltimore pastor Logan Kurtz, RAPED, a woman who resisted participating in specific sexual acts. The FBI agent who surveyed the room asserted that King looked out, laughed, and offered advice. Other allegations include the King philandering, long known to be extensive and was even more rampant than historians knew, that King took part in group sex, that King may have fathered a child with one of his mistresses, and less appearingly, that King continued taking money from his one-time ally Stanley Levinson, a Communist Party member, even after he was supposed to have broken off ties. So, Martin Luther King was backed by the communists, man, and Martin Luther King was low-key a communist, allegedly. But that's what it was about, man. It was about implementing communist or Marxist tactics into American society, in order to, how he believed, to uplift his people. But Marxism, it doesn't work anywhere. Marxism is just, it makes people all equally disenfranchised. That's what it basically does. And they've been slowly trying to implement more Marxism really since the late 1800s in American society. All right. So these were the allegations that they said. This is actually the document that the FBI has put together that came out when they released the JFK documents back in, or some of the JFK documents back in 2019 or 2018. And for some reason, there was about a 20-page report of MLK that came out as well. And some people wonder why did it come out with the JFK? I think that it was put in there because almost like a predictive programming of what was going to come in 10 years about when Martin Luther King's documents were coming out, because they got like 200 pages of MLK. They got a real database on him. And this is 20 pages. It's just it's just a fraction of what they have on him. So we're not going to read the whole document, but there's some things I want to get into. Like I said, this is stuff that they found. They've been collecting data on him for years. So let's read the intro. Since 1956, Martin Luther King Jr. has occupied a prominent role in the drive for equal rights for Negroes in the United States. During this critical period in our nation's history, much has depended on him as the individual Negroes in great numbers have looked to for leadership in their drive to achieve equality. Much depends on him still in these times, with racial tensions have created an atmosphere of fear and foreboding among many Negroes and whites alike. The course King chooses to follow at this crucial time could have momentous impact on the future of race relations in the United States, and for that reason, this paper has been prepared to give some insight into the nature of the man himself, as well as the nature of his views, goals, objectives, tactics, and reasons therefore. As we know, Edgar, what's his name? Edgar, uh, Edgar Hoover, the FBI leader at the time, the FBI director. He had a bone against Martin Luther King. He had a bone against all so-called black leaders of any black movement. He was the one that created the COINTELPRO, or basically any leaders, any organization that was a threat seen to the American state government. He thought it had to be destroyed. And it wasn't just all black movements; it was some white nationalist movements as well. But particularly, he was into destroying all the black movements. So he had documents on Malcolm X as well. But how people would like to, they like to talk about how they had this to set up Martin Luther King and all this stuff. They just putting things on his name. They throwing dirt on his name. I was like, they had dirt on Malcolm X as well, but they don't have the dirt like this. There's no documents of any sexual stuff with Malcolm X. He was real straight. Malcolm X really believed in Islam. Martin Luther King did not believe in Christianity, or his idea of what Christianity was. All right. All right, so let's see. Martin Luther King, president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, has stated publicly that he and 3,000 of his followers will march on Washington, D.C. this spring. He has announced that he will lead a massive civil disobedience campaign that will disrupt the normal course of business and, in fact, close down the nation's capital. All right, let's keep going. Black nationals' terror. One serious danger in the confrontation lies in the proposed action of the Black Nationals Group, which planned to attempt to seize initiative and escalate the nonviolent demonstrations into violence. King has met with Black nationalists and attempted to solicit their support. Stokely Carmichael, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, an extremist Black national organization, was conferred with King. Carmichael endorses the objectives of King and advises he will not oppose or interfere with the Washington Springs Project plans for nonviolence. However, he also states his role will be governed by what SNCC decides. Uh, um, All right, strong communist influence. Another implicating factor in the picture is the degree of communist influence on King. One of King's principal advisors, Stanley David Levison, ostensibly only a New York City attorney and businessman, Levison is in fact a shrewd, dedicated communist. Levison has spent a major part of his life advancing communist interests. Levison gravitated to Martin Luther King Jr. in 1956. He has been as dedicated in his support of King as he has been in advancing communist goals. He has actively involved himself in fundraising drives for King, served as his legal counsel in certain matters, suggested speech material for him, discussed with King's demonstration in which King was involved, guided him in regard to acceptance or rejection of various public appearances and speaking commitments, and helped him with matters related to articles and books King has prepared. And if people don't know what communism is, I know, we didn't grow up in the 1960s and stuff. We didn't know about the McCartney, scandals and stuff like that. But communism basically was, or the modern day communism, what we think about is created by Karl Marx and Frederick Engels. They were these German philosophers who they wrote the Communist Manifesto. And the Communist Manifesto was basically a philosophical essay on how to help the working class, allegedly how to help the working class or the disenfranchised people to overthrow capitalism. That's what allegedly that is supposed to be about, or overthrow the ruling elite, what we would call capitalism or capitalists. But those who have a deeper understanding of this agenda understand that this is just really a Trojan horse for Luciferianism. And basically, the core components of Luciferianism is to remove the privacy ownership rights, take away ownership of land, destroy the family structure, infiltrate the educational system, and to separate any belief in a spiritual entity or a higher power. And as you know, in American society, this has always been done. This has been done systematically over the last 150 years. So communism has been slowly been implemented into American society, and they use someone like Martin Luther King to advance that. Because it's easier to take advantage of the people under a communist government than if they were believers in some form of the scriptures. So they want you to all be communists. That's why China is the ideal model for every country right now, because people they basically just live to survive. They don't really have a higher belief in anything except just to get through the day. When people are Christian or Muslim, they feel a sense of loyalty to someone else other than the government, and they want to destroy that, or at least they want to water down Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, those three major Abrahamic religions, to a place where they could be subjugated to the government. You could still believe in your ideals, but you can't implement what your scriptures want you to implement in your life, like control of your family, and man being the leader of the house, and things like that. But let's keep going. Stanley Levison has told Clarence Jones, another advisor to King, that under no circumstances should King be permitted to say anything without their approving it. Wow. Levison also informed Jones that King is such a slow thinker, he is usually not prepared to make statements without help from someone. Levison actively participating in the planning for King's Washington Spring project. So wow, they they really said that Martin Luther King was a pawn. They they were using Martin Luther King, and he wanted to be used. Background of the founder: Martin Luther King Jr. was born January 15, 1929, at Atlanta, Georgia. His name at birth was Michael Luther King Jr. In 1935, his first name was changed to Martin King. Received an AB degree in 1948 from Morehouse College, Atlanta, Georgia. He then entered Crozer Theological Seminary, Chester, Pennsylvania, where he was one of 6 Negroes among 100 students. He won the Placer Award as the most outstanding student, was president of the senior class, and received the J. Lewis Crozer Fellowship for graduate study at the university of his choice. King graduated from Crozer Theological Seminary with a Bachelor of Divinity degree in 1951 and did graduate work at Boston University, Boston, Massachusetts, where he secured a PhD degree in 1955. So dang, Martin Luther King was 20 years old. He got his PhD. Genius. He was a genius, man. But he's also easily to be used because they knew he was intelligent, but they knew he could be, be used. Upon graduation, he was offered the pastorate of 2 Baptist churches in the East and teaching posts in the 3 colleges. King chose the pastorate of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. After becoming established in his church, he founded the Montgomery Improvement Association and led local Negroes in the Montgomery Boy Boycott that attracted national attention. In March 1957, he founded the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, this SCLC, with himself as president. He still holds position today. He is also co-pastor of the Ebenezer Baptist Church, Atlanta, Georgia. Stanley Levison was attracted to King and SCLC when King gained national attention. Levison soon developed a close relationship with King. It was known as King's group as Assistant Chief. So he had a communist leader as an assistant chief who said that he was so slow to speech that he needed someone to basically prep his messages. Wow. In 1961, he was assistant treasurer of SCLC. Prior to joining forces with King, Levison led a double life for Communist Party USA. Outwardly, he was a successful businessman, but he was also clandestine fundraiser for the Communist Party USA. He was entrusted with raising and handling secret funds for the party and used some of these funds to finance his own activities. Through Levison's influence, other service were attracted to SCLC. Hunter Pitts Odell, former National Committee member of the Communist Party USA, was employed by SCLC in 1962 when King mentioned to Levison that he was thinking of adding an administrative assistant to his staff. Levison recommended Odell, who was then head of SCLC's New York office. King said he liked the idea, and at the time, King was well aware of Levison and Odell's communist affiliations. So slowly, the SCLC was becoming more communist. The reason King enjoyed this close relationship with communists is best explained by the fact that Levison, in February 1962, passed the word to Gus Hall, the General Secretary of the Communist Party USA. King is a wholehearted Marxist who has studied it, Marxism, believes in it, and agrees with it. But because of his being a minister of religion, does not dare to espouse it publicly. Further, in March 1962, Levison told the Communist Party USA functionary that King was concerned about a communist label being pinned on us, but that at the same time, he wanted to do everything possible to evidence friendship toward the Soviet Union. In addition, King had been described within the Communist Party USA as a true, genuine Marxist Leninist from the top of his head to the tips of his toes. The feeling within the Communist Party USA at the time, and still is, that King definitely follows a Marxist Leninist line. All right. King was forced to get rid of Hunter Pitts Odell in October 1962, with several newspaper articles exposed Odell's connection with SCLC and his communist affiliations. King still tried to hide Odell in his organization until July 1963, when he accepted Odell's resignation, quote unquote resignation, as King put it. Odell release was not because of the connection between Odell and the Communist Party USA, but because of the emotional public response. Odell has continued his efforts to make his presence felt in the city's right movement in behalf of the Communist Party USA. The winter 1967 issue of Freedom Ways, self-described as Review of the Negro Freedom Movement, lists Odell as associate managing editor. Actually, Freedom Ways is a Communist USA initiated and the Communist USA supported publication espousing the communist viewpoint on Negro problems. All right. So this is just some of the stuff that communist Martin Luther King was speaking of communist stuff. And former communist advisors, Bayard Rustin, as a former advisor to King and a one-time assistant secretary to SCLC. Rustin was has publicly admitted affiliation with the communist movement in the late 1930s. He was also one of the selected members of the observers permitted to attend the Communist Party USA National Convention in 1957. King said he had to let Rustin go because of problems arising from his homosexual activities. And if people don't know, Bayard Rustin was a homosexual. That's not alleged. That's true. He's actually married to a Caucasian man. That he, at the time, it was illegal to marry, to have a man, homosexual marriage. So he actually adopted the man as his son, but they were actually having a marriage affiliation, basically. But yeah, he's currently, or I believe, at least when I checked a couple years ago, he was still married to the Caucasian man. But that's Bayard Rustin. So I don't know if he passed or not. I don't know. But yeah, so these are the people that are affiliated with Martin Luther King. So you see the hidden motives that were behind you in regards to your movement. Because there's nothing wrong with doing what he's doing. It is what it is. It is what it is. It's American society. You can do what you want to do here. But I'm saying that when you're leading a group of people, you have to let them know the affiliations that you're associated with, so they can be aware of the things that they're going to be participating in. Because if you have communists and homosexuals who are your top advisors, obviously there's going to be an agenda behind this Civil Rights Act that you're trying to get passed. It really is going to benefit them more than the people that you allegedly tried to help. All right, but let's keep going, because it's just stuff that he's a part of. So let's go. King wins the Nobel Peace Prize. This is going to be interesting. Yeah, not that part. Where is it? Let's get into some stuff. Here it is. King's personal conduct. With the funds that he received from the Ford Foundation, King held the first of two workshops in Miami, Florida in February 1968 to train Negro ministers in urban leadership. One Negro minister in attendance later expressed his disgust with the behind-the-scene drinking, fornication, and homosexuality that went on at the conference. Several Negro and white prostitutes were brought in from the Miami area, and an all-night sex orgy was held with these prostitutes and some of the delegates in attendance. One room had a large table in which was filled with whiskey. The two Negro prostitutes were paid $50 to put on a sex show for the entertainment of guests. A variety of sex acts deviating from the normal were observed. So he had prostitutes. Now, he was doing a minister conference. He had a bunch of whiskey. He had prostitutes. And then he said, not only that, he wanted to do things that were deviating from the norm. So you don't know what the heck they were doing. What were they doing in there? You don't know what the heck was going on. Previously, sexual experiences. This activity is not new to King and his associates. As early as January 1964, King engaged in another 2-day drunken sex orgy In Washington, D.C., many of those present engaged in sexual acts, natural as well as unnatural, for the entertainment on onlookers. When one of the females shied away from engaging in an unnatural act, King and other of the male present discussed how she was to be taught and initiated in this respect. So now Martin Luther King, he was putting the pimp hand down. He was like, "Hey, you gonna do what I tell you to do." Martin Luther King, man, he was no joke. But it sounds like Martin Luther King, he was just a young dude who liked sex. That's what it sounds like. He was into sex and he just like, he wanted to help his people. But there's a difference between having, sex for, pleasure. Sex is a beautiful thing, but it's a difference between having sex for pleasure with your wife or even your wives or even with your concubines in order. He's having orgies. He's having like, he got Stanley Levison right here having sex. He got Jesse Jackson having sex in the corner. He got Bayard Rustin probably having sex with a man over there, and Martin Luther King got two prostitutes in his lap, and it's all over the place, man. That's an abomination. That's a real sex demon that he had on him, man. But it sounds like he was into that since his young age, probably, and he just got caught up in the civil rights thing. But if he was just been who he was, he probably would have been, probably been okay. But he was putting on this act. That's the thing. You don't want to act like something. Just be who you are, man. Be that sexual deviant that you are. But just don't lead your people into destruction because you have a demon that you can't fight. All right. Keep going. Throughout the issuing years and until this date, King has continued to carry on his sexual aberrations secretly while holding himself out to the public view as a moral leader of religious conviction. So he was faking the whole time. King's mistress. It was learned in February 1968 from a very responsible Los Angeles individual in a position to know that King has been having an illicit love affair with the wife of a prominent Negro dentist in Los Angeles, California since 1962. Wow. He believes King fathered a baby girl born to this woman inasmuch as her father or her husband is allegedly sterile. So Martin Luther King was having sex with prostitutes and possibly other men, and now he's sleeping with another man's wife. And he's a pastor, allegedly. The child resembles King to a great degree, and King contributes to the support of this child. He calls this woman every Wednesday and frequently meets her in various cities throughout the country. The individual who reported this to himself, a prominent Negro who is related by law to King's mistress, he advised he has known King since 1960 and refers to him as a quote unquote hypocrite. He also reported that King is having illicit love affairs with three other women, one of whom is Joan Baez, and nationally known folk singer, the nationally known folk singer. The prominent Negro who furnished the information said he was appalled that a man of King's low character could cause so much trouble for both Negroes and the government. As can be seen from above, it is a fact that King not only regularly indulges in adulterous acts, but enjoys the abnormal by engaging in group sexual orgies. And that's the thing, the scriptures talk about, sex orgies, threesomes, foursomes, running trains, like all that stuff. That's demonic, man. Like that's a demon, man. If y'all into that, man, please repent. Because it's not that's not good, man. Sex is a beautiful thing, man. Don't get it twisted, man. But there's an order to do things. Once you start getting all this other stuff out of here, man, you start having this, same sex, orgies and stuff like that, man. You're going off. All right, King's historic aspect. These facts about the Nobel Peace Prize winner makes his remarks seem incongruous when he replied after winning his Cherish Award. History has thrust me into this position. It could be immoral and a sign of ingratitude if I did not face my moral responsibility to do what I can do or do what I can in the civil rights struggle. So, like I said, this is the official document that came out, I think back in 2018, but it was compiled back in 1968, and I think it was officially put together in the 90s. But there's more coming out, man. That's just a small piece of the iceberg, man. that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a whole glacier underneath this, man. So much stuff is going to come out in these last days, man. Like I said, the official documents are going to come out in 2027. I think this is just to prepare us, but it's also to get, basically so-called black men and a lot of the potential elect of the Most High to disavow themselves from this historical narrative, man. This is not, all this stuff was fabricated, man. Civil rights movement, it was all fabricated, allegedly. But the Most High is waking up people to basically stop being so emotionally dependent on this world, psychologically dependent on this world. And first thing you have to do is to unlearn the fake history and relearn real history. Face the truth. So the truth of what is what will set you free, as Christ said. All right, peace.